Welcome to another episode of the All Turtles Podcast, a show about entrepreneurship and AI. I'm John Cifuentes, co-founder at All Turtles. At All Turtles, we build AI products. How we decide which products to build and which product creators we want to work with is a process we've continued to hone since founding our company. So we've come up with a system for classifying the types of products people pitch us, so we can quickly understand, as a group, what we believe are the strengths or opportunities of an idea, and also the potential failure states of each. This classification system is our product taxonomy. And because this taxonomy has been so useful to us, we think it will be useful to any product creator, or investor, or anyone interested in entrepreneurship and building or evaluating new products. We've discussed this taxonomy on a previous episode in Season 1, but we've recorded an updated version so you can have a comprehensive breakdown of how we think through product ideas. Phil Libin and Jessica Collier, my co-founders at All Turtles, recorded this episode. Let's hear what they have to say.
Welcome to the All Turtles product taxonomy. I'm Jessica Collier.
And I'm Phil Libin.
We're going to talk about how we taxonomize different product ideas.
We're going to be stuffing dead animals?
Yes.
Huh.
Taxidermy.
Oh, that's the difference. I see. Taxonomy.
So we have a couple of different categories that we kind of insert different product ideas and products that we're working on into to help us better understand the ways in which those product ideas might fail so that we can more easily focus on like the next right milestone for each product.
Because we see so many different ideas and we get pitched by so much stuff that it's just useful to have a shorthand system of talking about it so that when we all talk about it as a team, we can be like, oh, that's type Segway, and we all know what that means.
Exactly. But you don't know what that means, so we're going to tell you.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. So our first product category in this taxonomy is the easiest one. It's the blockchain.
It's the one that we never work on.
It's the one that we never, ever work on. So if we can identify something as a blockchain, we just release it back into the universe.
That's right. And we call it the blockchain, not because necessarily it has anything to do with the blockchain, but because it's a code name for things that don't actually solve real problems. There's not like an actual problem that they're solving. It's some made up thing that people just like want to jam a piece of technology into. So
right. Or it's technology in search of a problem is another way of describing it.
A better way of describing it. Yes. Technology in search of a problem doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad companies. It just means that we just don't have really the time to focus on them because we like to start with problems and then solve them.
Work our way towards solutions using technology.
All right. So no blockchains. What is taxonomy type the second?
Taxonomy type the second is the Play-Doh. This is sort of like the purgatory of product category. It basically means that
Play-Doh, not like the philosopher.
No, like the stuff that kids play with.
Oh.
Play-Doh.
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 It smells nice. It's fun to mold.
Yes. But basically this means that we see a problem. We don't have a clear picture of like what the interaction is going to be or the sort of form the solution is going to take.
Yeah, so this is something where we're listening about this and it all sounds really good. Like it sounds like they're solving a real problem. Usually it means that we like the team a lot.
And we like the problem.
Yeah, we like the problem. We like the team. Maybe there's even some interesting technology.
Mm-hmm.
But we keep asking like, yeah, but what is it? But what is it actually going to do? Like, what is it actually going to feel like?
Mm-hmm.
But we do sometimes work on Play-Doh. We kind of try to mold it into something.
Right. But the thing about Play-Doh is that they have to move on to one of the next two categories in order for us to keep working on it.
So if we classify something as a Play-Doh, it's like it's promising and we like the people involved and we'll say, okay, let's spend a few weeks or a few months, bending it into silly shapes until it actually starts to look like something identifiable, and then we evaluate it.
Yeah, and I see being able to work on Play-Dohs as a real privilege, right? This is our time to like play around with like really substantive problems and see what form the solutions might take.
And get our hands to smell nice.
Yeah, get our hands to smell nice. But a Play-Doh must become either a flying shoe or a Costner for us to continue. Phil, what is a flying shoe?
A flying shoe is the third type of product. And basically that is a pitch that just sounds really good. It solves a real problem and the team seems plausible and the thing that they're describing just kind of sounds like a magical solution. And the question is, really, does it actually work?
Right. Like, if in fact we can make this happen, everyone will want this.
Yeah. The name Flying Shoe comes from something that I've experienced a lot back when I was a VC or an angel investor. Once in a while, I would get a pitch. I would start something like this, get some entrepreneurs come in, and slide one, they would say, okay, so we invented a shoe that flies. It looks like a normal shoe, and it costs the same as a normal shoe, and it's just as comfortable to wear, except when you wear it, you can fly. And you're like, well, that's pretty good. And then slide two, they're like, so we did some surveys, and we found out that 83% of people say that they would consider buying such a flying shoe. And you're like, okay. And
You're
then
like,
slide
duh.
three, it's like, well, and we think our market is going to be targeted at millennial influencers, and we're going to get to them by social media. And on the other hand, we're going to target professional knowledge workers through something. And at some point, you're just like, shut up. The next thing I want to see is a shoe flying on my desk. Because if this thing works, I don't care about your go-to-market model. I don't care about your business plan. Obviously, it's going to be a huge success if only it works.
And so what we try to do is to encourage products that are at the flying shoe phase to either move into the Costner phase. Either we're like, okay, it's a flying shoe and it literally flies. Let's move on. Or there are three ways in which a flying shoe can fail.
Yeah, the three failure modalities, the three things that can go wrong. The first one we call the DaVinci.
Yes, because of these beautiful, elaborate sketches of things that can be imagined, but can't necessarily be built.
The idea was that Leonardo da Vinci never really invented anything. He dreamt up a lot of stuff, but you couldn't actually take his dreamings and drawings and build a helicopter. He was the one that imagined it. But imagining something isn't actually particularly useful. So we're looking for people with a plan to make something, not just a dream of something that could be made. And then they're just kind of looking to us to actually figure out how to do it.
Right. And then on the other hand, there's the jetpack.
Failure modality for the flying shoe number 2 is the jetpack.
Right. So in other words, has anyone ever really built a jetpack that actually delivers on the promise of a jetpack?
Yeah. Or can you kind of do it, but it's kind of going to suck.
Yeah, exactly. It's really going to suck. At least it's going to suck in the way that you can build it to sell it to enough people at a low enough cost.
It's just not going to meet its promise.
Right.
So the jetpack failure modality. And then the third failure modality of the flying shoe is the HW.
Oh, okay. So where does this come from?
This comes from George H.W. Bush, who apparently this is actually not a true story.
It's an apocryphal story.
Well, it was reported. It was a true story in the sense that it was definitely reported at the time. It just was probably made up or apocryphal. But famous apocryphal story about our late 41st president was when he was on the campaign trail and he was in a grocery store. And this was sometime in the 90s already, probably during the 92 election. And he saw a checkout scanner and he kind of raved afterwards about how innovative this thing was, where you just scanned some groceries and it beeped and no one had to type in the price. And he was amazed about American ingenuity. And of course, the joke was that he just hadn't been in a grocery store for 20 years because these things have been around forever.
And so the technology existed, he just didn't know about it.
Yeah. So the HW failure modality is yeah, it's actually not that magical. It's just new to you because you're kind of out of the loop.
You've been under a rock somewhere.
Well, and this is actually a particularly common failure modality for venture capitalists because I think a lot of VCs kind of think they know everything and they think they're super smart because that's all the feedback they ever get is, oh my God, you write big checks, you're so brilliant.
But maybe they haven't been active in industry for a while.
Yeah, and so they think that well, I'm super smart and I've never heard of this thing, therefore it must be revolutionary.
Right.
But maybe you just don't know about it.
So those are the three ways that a flying shoe can fail. But then if a flying shoe is actually a flying shoe and it flies,
then there's the last type of company taxonomy, which is the Costner.
And really, at the end of the day, practically everything falls into the Costner bucket in the end. The Costner bucket,
named after the perfectly serviceable actor,
oh God, Kevin
Costner.
As I call him, Kevin. The umbrella hypothesis for the Costner is the question: if you build it, will they come?
And it's just it's fine. It's probably okay.
It solves a problem. It can be built. It can be brought to market in a reasonable amount.
You can see how this would be good.
Yep.
But you can also see how it won't be good. And it's just going to come down to the details.
Yeah.
It's always in the details.
Exactly. So most of the things we work on, I think, in the end, fall into the Costner bucket.
They either start as Costners, meaning, it's a perfectly plausible idea and there's no real technology risk. It's just going to be details. Or maybe they start as Play-Dohs or flying shoes, but then when we've actually like proven that it's a real thing and it works, then there's still all the details to do.
Exactly. And so there are
a bunch.
There's a whole bunch of ways in which Costners can fail because this is the catch-all bucket.
Yeah, 5 failure modalities.
The first failure modality is actually my favorite failure modality of all, which is Waterworld.
It's called Waterworld.
It really just means that it's going to take way too long and cost way too much money to get to market to the point where it will be an embarrassment.
Yeah, so we think that something is Waterworld if we're just like, you're not actually going to be able to get this to ship anywhere near on time and on budget, so don't bother.
Exactly.
Second failure modality, which is my favorite for the Costner, is we call it golf.
Yeah, it's like a thing. It has a go-to-market strategy, but in the end, it's boring and we just don't care.
Yeah,
and also maybe it's bad for the environment.
Well, maybe, but also like we're not actually saying there's anything necessarily wrong with it, and we acknowledge that there's lots of people who are fascinated by golf. We just aren't. We just don't care, and we just don't really want to work on something unless we super much care about it. And honestly, that wouldn't be being fair to the golf enthusiasts either. So,
So then there's New Coke.
The third failure modality is New Coke. I don't know if either of our listeners is actually old enough to remember New Coke.
Yeah, I think I'm barely old enough to remember New Coke. However, I do get the analogy, which is like, we actually don't need to build this product because a better version of this already exists, which is to say like regular Coke.
Yeah, at some point in the 80s, Coca-Cola came out with New Coke and abandoned Coca-Cola and said this was much better, and everyone just kind of hated it, and they were like, we kind of liked Coke. And so, yeah. Like, is this thing new just for the sake of being new? Is there already a better version that we could just save a lot of time and not work on it?
Right. Sometimes when old things are good, they're just called classic.
That's right. The fourth failure modality of the Costner is the timeshare. We went through a lot of trouble naming this thing.
We really did.
We were going to call it like the gym membership.
Yeah.
We had a few other names for it, but the basic idea is the economics just don't work.
Yep. In the end, the money that you sink into a timeshare is probably not worth what you get out of it.
Yeah, you're never going to come out on top. And in product ideas, it just may mean that it's way too expensive to actually run this product. You'll never be able to charge enough for it. People aren't used to paying. Like, for whatever reason, like the unit economics are just upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's my second favorite of the Costner failure modalities, which is the Segway.
The Segway.
So the Segway is, when we have a Costner that it turns out like people just don't actually want this.
Yeah, it turns out that like you can build it exactly the way you thought it would, and it would come out more or less the same. And maybe
it delivers on the promise.
Yeah, it delivers on the promise. And the example is the actual Segway. Like, I remember when the Segway was first being talked about, I was so excited. Oh my God, I wanted a Segway. It seemed like the greatest thing. And I think I even like pre-ordered one or something, and I was super excited about it. And then like they finally came out, and I finally got to see people riding around on them, and I was like, oh, maybe I don't want this.
Maybe walking is actually better if you can walk.
Yeah. And then I think most of the world had that reaction where they kind of looked at Segways and they were like, you know what? Don't really want this.
Yeah. Also, we have the bicycle and skateboards.
Yeah, but it actually delivered what it said. Like, it was actually exactly the product that was promised. It just turns out that it's not a product people wanted. And this happens a lot. Like, we've built things like this already.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've built things that we've built, and they turn out to go exactly the way that we wanted them to go. It just that turns out that we thought people would want it, and they just kind of don't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Segway. People don't really want this thing.
Yeah. So this is how we approach categorizing the products we're working on so that we can kind of identify what the major, risk is for each.
Yeah, we have
individual thing.
The four major categories: the blockchain, the Play-Doh, the flying shoe, and the Costner. And then with failure modalities for each one. And the point of this is like we will listen to a pitch, and then afterwards we'll just say golf.
Mm-hmm. And then we're done.
And we're done. People know what it means. We don't need to discuss it. Or if we say, well, okay, it's a Costner, so how do we make sure that it's not a Waterworld?
Right.
Meaning, do we think we can actually build it in a way that isn't going to be too long? Are the economics okay? Can we make sure that it's not going to be a timeshare?
Yeah, it helps us prioritize the questions we need to ask to make sure that we're working on the right things at the right time.
And often it helps us prioritize the actual work. So, for example, for things that are flying shoes, and we've got a couple of flying shoes that we're working on.
Indeed.
Like, that's the most important thing. It's like, don't worry about the marketing or any of the other stuff. Like, worry about
whether the shoe flies.
Yeah. Does it actually fly? Like, well, does it work and is it new? Is it a DaVinci? Like, Can you actually make it? Is it a jetpack? Can you actually make it close enough to the original vision to still be as awesome as we think it is? And like, is it actually new, or is it only new to you because you don't know about it?
Are we sure that it doesn't already exist?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
This podcast is a production of the All Turtles worldwide media empire. We recorded this episode in the world-class Donatella studio in San Francisco, California. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, send us an email at hello@all-turtles.com. Marie reads every message. Thanks to Jim Metzendorf for editing this episode, Marie McCoy-Thompson for production supervision and editorial management, Chris Plug for his audio expertise, Micah Rivera for our artwork, and Matt Ammerman for our theme music. On behalf of Jessica Collier, Phil Libin, and yours truly, John Cifuentes, and the rest of the All Turtles team, thanks for listening.